The last lecture we used the default value for h and we also nested our properties. Now let's dive a bit deeper into how we can modify the way vModel works with these inputs. Right now, the data down there is updated with each keystroke. And I can prove this by going to my password and outputting the current value directly below the password, simply so that we can see it on the same page as the input field. So if I save this, if I now enter a password here, we can see it updates with each keystroke. That is the default. It reacts to the input event, which means it updates whenever the input here changes. Now, maybe we only want to update it after we entered the full password and, well, clicked in another input. So basically, once we're done finishing this input. We can do this by adding a modifier to vModel here. I can add the lazy modifier with .lazy. What this will do is that behind the scenes, it will now not listen to the input event, so whenever we type something, whenever we enter something new, but to the change event, which is only fired once we click somewhere else, once we leave that input. You can see it in action here. If I now remove this, you see test is still there. Only once I click into another input field does test disappear. And on the same hand, if I now type here, it will only appear if I leave that input. That might be the behavior you want if you don't want to update on each keystroke. For example, if you know you're going to write your values only upon hitting submit anyways, or that is the place where you then want to validate them and use them, well, you might use lazy to not update this instantly. On the other hand, if you want to provide real-time validation or give the user some hints, some auto-completion, you might need that behavior of automatically detecting each keystroke and not only react once the user is done. But it's great to know that you get this option. Other modifiers you can use are trim, to trim any excess white space at the beginning and end if you want to force that you don't have such white space, or number, so .number, .trim would have been the alternative for trimming, .number to force that behind the scenes the input is converted to a number right away. By default it will be a string. Everything you input here is a string. That is how HTML works. But if you know you want to work with number in your Vue.js code, you could add .number as a modifier, like we add .lazy here, so .number like that, and that would force it to be transformed to a number automatically so that you can work with that. That is how you can use modifiers to adjust the input way, so when to react, as well as format with trim and number in the way you need it to behave.